Welcome to BL Stories, where romance, drama, and unforgettable boys' love come to life. Love knows no limits, and the best stories aren't always straight. Subscribe now and join our growing BL-loving family. Dr. Anthony Lawrence was known as the most successful doctor of his time. Admired by colleagues, respected by patients, and cherished by the public, he seemed to be living the perfect life. That illusion shattered the moment he was kidnapped by one of the most feared men in the city, taken not out of vengeance, but out of desperation. The man's son needed saving, and Anthony was the only one who could help. Anthony soon realized his life would never return to what it once was. Not when the mysterious and dangerous man began to take an unsettling interest in him, an interest that went far beyond gratitude. Chapter 1. Elias Easton POV. Dr. Anthony Lawrence is considered the best oncologist of our time. He's credited with developing groundbreaking treatments that have saved millions of lives, including cures for some of the most devastating diseases. At only 21, he has achieved what many thought impossible. Tell us, doctor, is there anything you can't do? Anthony's cheeks flushed pink as he glanced down shyly, struggling to find the right words. His soft blonde hair fell slightly across his forehead, framing his striking blue eyes and calm expression. Even on camera, he radiated a kind of quiet brilliance that drew people in. The reporter, a much older man, seemed captivated not only by Anthony's achievements but also by his gentle demeanor. Compliments flowed so easily that the interview sometimes felt more personal than professional. Honestly, Anthony replied softly, I don't think I'm better than others. I was fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. Much of what I've accomplished is thanks to the team behind me. Hearing his modest tone, paired with that slightly husky voice, sent an unexplainable rush through me. I knew him only from afar, through news clips, interviews, and documentaries, yet he was already the one person I couldn't stop thinking about. Now, tell us, the reporter continued with a smile, is there someone special in your life? Surely, a man as brilliant and accomplished as you can't still be single. Anthony laughed nervously, his blush deepening. No one. I suppose I haven't met the right person yet. I leaned forward on the sofa, narrowing my eyes at the screen. He just doesn't know it yet, but soon he won't be single anymore. Elias. My best friend and assistant, Eric, interrupted my thoughts, making me tense. I turned sharply, irritated at being pulled from Anthony's image. What? I snapped. Eric sighed, his gaze flicking to the screen before he grabbed the remote and switched off the television. You've been sitting here for weeks, watching every interview and documentary about him. You're the head of one of the most powerful organizations in the city, yet here you are, hiding in your apartment, glued to the screen like a lovesick teenager. I stood, glaring at him. Even a mafia boss needs a break. Eric crossed his arms. This isn't a break, Elias. Your son is lying in a hospital bed, and you're ignoring everything else while you obsess over this doctor. His words hit harder than I expected. My son, Sam, just 8 years old, had been in a coma for 3 months. He was caught in the crossfire of a gunfight I could never forgive myself for. Machines kept him alive, but the doctors I employed offered me no hope. Every day, their answer was the same, wait for a miracle. But I wasn't a man who waited for miracles. I created them. I am doing this for Sam, I finally said, lowering my voice. If anyone can help him, it's Anthony Lawrence. Eric's eyes widened as if he already knew where my thoughts were heading. Elias, tell me you're not planning what I think you are. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I walked into my bathroom, letting the hot water run as I tried to clear my head. Anthony's face, his quiet strength, his brilliance, they haunted me. He wasn't just the world's greatest doctor. He was my last hope. When I stepped out, Eric was still there, waiting. Kidnapping him will bring the world down on us, he warned. Maybe, I said calmly, adjusting my cufflinks as I dressed in one of my best suits. But if he saves Sam, then it's worth everything. He's the only one I trust with my son's life. Eric shook his head, but I didn't care. I smirked as I slipped on my watch, my thoughts already set. Dr. Anthony Lawrence, the world may admire you, but soon you'll belong to me. Chapter 2. Anthony Lawrence POV. Anthony, why don't you give us a chance? Madison asked for what felt like the 1000th time, trailing after me in my best friend's cafe, completely ignoring the fact that I was supposed to be working. The line of customers waiting for coffee and cake was already getting restless. I ran a hand through my hair in frustration, cutting a slice of strawberry cheesecake for a woman whose sharp glare made it clear she had been waiting too long. "Here's your strawberry cheesecake, Miss Markle," I said politely to the elderly woman, who, unfortunately for me, came in at the same time every day during my shift. "I'm still waiting for the day you finally get fired," she huffed, taking a bite. I forced a smile and chose silence over a reply. "How dare you talk to him like that?" Madison snapped, flipping her dark hair over her shoulder and crossing her arms. She was striking, long hair, pale skin, and sharp green eyes, but her fiery temper often overshadowed her beauty. "Do you even know who he is?" Miss Markle didn't look the least bit intimidated. "I know exactly who he is. And while I respect his achievements as a doctor, right now he's a waiter. A very clumsy one at that. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to enjoy my cake." Madison's voice rose as she declared, "This is Dr. Anthony Lawrence, the most brilliant doctor alive. You should treat him with respect." The entire cafe turned to stare. Heat crept up my neck. "Maddie, enough," I said gently, trying to calm her down. But she only pouted. "Anthony, I just want to help," she insisted, following me into the kitchen as I tried to escape the stares. Her persistence had been relentless for months. Texts, calls, and daily appearances at both the hospital and the cafe. I cared for Madison in a protective, older brother way, but she refused to understand the boundaries I tried to set. Just then, Jasmine bustled into the kitchen, her arms full of groceries. "Sorry it took so long." "Jazz, breathe," I said, moving to help her. But before I could steady her, she tripped, and the eggs in her hands fell to the floor. Madison laughed until I shot her a glare. I helped Jasmine up, reaching for tissues to clean the mess, but she stopped me with a warm smile. "Tony, you've been working all day. Take a break, okay?" "I'm fine," I reassured her. "You need the help more than I need a rest." "You're an angel," she sighed, relieved. The cafe eventually quieted down, but Madison never left my side. She leaned across the counter with a grin. "I found a beautiful white wedding dress today, and a matching suit for you. What do you think?" She shoved her phone in my face. "Very beautiful," I replied flatly without looking. Her eyes widened in mock horror. "You weren't supposed to see it. That's bad luck." I bit back a sigh, unwilling to fuel her fantasies any further. Before I could escape into the rhythm of work, the bell above the door chimed. A man in a tailored suit walked in. He carried himself with quiet authority, his gray-blue eyes scanning the room until they locked on me. For reasons I couldn't explain, my heart pounded. His gaze felt heavy, piercing, as if he could see straight through me. My face flushed under the intensity, and I quickly turned away, trying to busy myself with the dishes. Jasmine sidled up to me, smirking. "Did you see the man who just walked in? He's gorgeous." "He looks older," I admitted cautiously. "And honestly, a little intimidating." "Just because you want to stay single forever doesn't mean I have to," she teased, brushing her hair out of its bun. I rolled my eyes. "I don't need details about your love life, Jazz." She only laughed, but before I could say more, Madison suddenly leaned in and pressed her lips against mine. The kiss was unexpected and one-sided. I froze, unwilling to embarrass her in public, though every instinct told me to step away. She pulled back quickly, face flushed, before rushing out of the cafe in silence. "That was something," Jasmine muttered, scribbling notes for an order. But I barely heard her. My eyes drifted back toward the man in the suit. His expression had changed. Fury and jealousy darkened his features, though we had never even met. His gaze burned into me like a storm held barely in check. And I couldn't understand why. Chapter 3. Elias Easton POV. Something inside me twisted with rage when I saw that girl touch what I had already decided was mine. My body went rigid, and the good mood I had carried moments before vanished, replaced by jealousy and frustration. Originally, I had planned to take things slowly, to give Anthony time to adjust to me before asking for his help with Sam. But watching him kiss someone else in front of everyone? That changed everything. My plans shifted in an instant, and I knew Anthony would not like what I had in mind. He always claimed to live by values and morals, yet here he was, letting a girl press her lips against his. Such a contradiction. I didn't even understand my own reaction. He was supposed to be nothing more than my son's doctor. Still, maybe Eric was right. Maybe I had become obsessed with Anthony in a way I couldn't explain. From across the cafe, I watched him behind the counter, carefully cutting a walnut brownie for a customer. He looked even better in real life than he ever had on screen. His golden hair caught the light, his blue eyes were brighter, and every detail of him seemed more vivid than I had imagined. My heart had skipped the moment I first saw him, and it hadn't slowed since. "Hello, handsome. Can I take your order?" A young woman with kind brown eyes approached me with a smile. Under other circumstances, I might have humored her attempt to flirt, but not today. Not when Anthony was in the room. I pulled some bills from my wallet and handed them to her. "You're very kind, but I'm here to speak with Dr. Lawrence. I'd appreciate it if he could serve me instead." Her smile faltered. "If you're a journalist, it's not the right time. He's exhausted. He's been working all day." I softened my tone. "I'm not a journalist. My son, he's in critical condition. I only want to ask Anthony a few questions. Nothing more." At that, her entire expression shifted. Pity filled her eyes. She nodded and, without taking the money, went straight to Anthony, who hesitated before looking at me with suspicion. When his friend finally convinced him, Anthony approached reluctantly. His posture was cautious, his eyes alert, as though he were ready to retreat at any moment. "You wanted to talk to me?" His voice was soft, with a faint rasp that sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. "That's right," I replied calmly. "But first, I'd like a black coffee." He gave me a polite nod, fetched the coffee, and returned quickly, setting it in front of me. His movements were precise, careful, as though he didn't want to get too close. "Thank you," I said. "Why don't you sit down?" "I'd rather stand," he replied, forcing a smile. His arms folded across his chest, his posture defensive. I took a sip of the coffee, studying him. "I don't know if your friend explained, but my son has been in a coma. I'm desperate. The doctors I've hired can do nothing. I was hoping you might be able to help." Anthony pressed his lips together, shifting uncomfortably. "Why not bring him to a hospital? That would be easier than discussing this in a cafe." "I would, if I could," I answered evenly. "But he's in no condition to be moved. He was shot during an attack." Anthony's eyes widened. "I'm sorry. That kind of trauma isn't my field. My research has been in oncology and immunology. I'm not trained for that." "Could you learn?" I asked sharply. "You're supposed to be the best." He shook his head slowly. "There are specialists better suited for this. I'm not the one you're looking for." Disappointment hit me hard. All my research, all my hope in him, crumbling with a single answer. "Understood," I said coldly, finishing my coffee and setting cash on the table. "It was nice meeting you, Dr. Lawrence. The so-called best doctor in the world." Without waiting for a reply, I left the cafe before I did something I would regret. Outside, I climbed into my car and immediately called Eric. "How was your meeting?" Eric asked teasingly. "I'm not in the mood for jokes," I snapped. His tone shifted. "So, he can't help Sam?" "No one else can either," I shot back. "Listen to me carefully. I want you to take someone with you, follow him home, and bring him to the mansion tonight." There was silence before Eric spoke again, disbelief in his voice. "You want to kidnap him? Elias, that's reckless. Just do as I say." I cut him off, my patience gone. "I expect him here before midnight. Do I make myself clear?" Eric didn't argue further. I hung up, leaning back in the driver's seat with a grim smile. If Anthony Lawrence wouldn't help me willingly, then I would give him no choice. Time to prove himself. Chapter 4. Anthony Lawrence POV. Well, you must have done something to really upset him, Jasmine teased, laughing lightly as if none of this were serious. It was just like her. She laughed through everything, whether it was funny or not. Even when she was sad or stressed, laughter was her shield. Normally, I was used to it, but tonight I was too tired and too unsettled to appreciate the humor. I'll never forgive you for talking me into this, I sighed, leaning against the counter in exhaustion. The way he looked at me, it was as if he wanted to hurt me simply because I couldn't help his son. I didn't know what had happened to cause such an injury to his boy, but I wanted no part in that kind of life. He actually looked quite interested in you, Jasmine said with a mischievous smirk as she wiped down tables. I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't deny the truth in her words. From the moment he walked in, his stare had been relentless, piercing, as though he could see through me completely. Even now, with him gone, I still felt the weight of those eyes on me. It was the kind of look that left you feeling exposed, no matter how much you tried to hide. I hoped it was the last time I'd ever see him. The encounter had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. He reminded me of the kind of figures you see in dark films, the ones who appear first as shadows, watching their prey before taking them away. My stomach turned. I sank into a chair, trying to steady my breathing. What if I had just given him a reason to come after me? Maybe I should have told him what he wanted to hear. But how could I treat injuries I had never studied in my life? Tony, are you okay? Jasmine asked softly, coming closer. You look pale. I forced a deep breath, trying to calm myself. Maybe I was overthinking as usual. Fame had taught me to deal with criticism and unwanted attention. It was part of the life I had chosen. Still, this man had felt different. Dangerous. Here, drink some water, Jasmine said, handing me a glass. Thanks, I murmured, finishing it in one gulp. Before I could gather myself, Miss Markle, the sharp-tongued customer who came daily, spoke from across the cafe. That boy needs rest. He looks ready to collapse. Jasmine gave me a sad smile. She's right. The cafe closes in an hour anyway. Go home, Tony. Get some real sleep. She wasn't wrong. I'd been surviving on 4 hours a night for weeks. Between the hospital, research, and helping Jasmine, I had no time left for myself. My friends were busy with their own lives. Jasmine had her cafe and her ill mother. My other close friend, Cole, had just married and was away on his honeymoon. Sometimes, coming home to my empty apartment was the hardest part. No one there to remind me to stop, to breathe, to live. People only saw the celebrated doctor, not the person underneath. I nodded and stood. Jasmine pulled me into a hug, squeezing too tightly before letting go. If you need help, call me, I told her. Shouldn't I be saying that to you? She replied with a frown. You're burning yourself out. I gave a weak laugh as we reached the door. People are suffering everywhere, Jazz. And Spencer Channing is right behind me, waiting to take my place. At the mention of Spencer, my rival and colleague, she sighed. You can't carry the world on your shoulders. You're not a machine. I wanted to answer, but my phone rang. Seeing Dad on the screen, I excused myself and stepped outside. Dad? I answered cautiously. Son, how are you? His voice was flat, almost businesslike. I'm fine. How's Mom? We're fine. But listen, Spencer Channing is developing a cure for blindness. If he succeeds, you could lose your standing. I bit back a sigh. Don't worry. I'll handle it. His tone softened. I only want the best for you. I know, I said, smiling faintly as I reached my penthouse. But as I ended the call, a wave of sadness hit me. Our conversations used to be warm. Now they were only about success and reputation. Inside, I tried to shake off the fatigue. I splashed water on my face, brewed more coffee, and forced myself to sit at my desk. The night dragged on, each yawn heavier than the last. By the time I poured my 4th cup of coffee, I was trembling from exhaustion. Then, the doorbell rang. I froze, staring at the clock. 11 p.m. too late for visitors. I hadn't ordered food. My mind, already tired, leapt to the worst possibilities. The bell rang again. Slowly, I walked to the door, heart pounding. When I opened it, a tall man in a black suit stood there, his expression unreadable. "Are you Dr. Anthony Lawrence?" he asked. "Yes," I replied cautiously. "Are you a fan?" He gave a dry laugh. "A fan? Because of you, I haven't slept for weeks. And now, instead of resting, I'm stuck here on this job." Confused, I tried to close the door, but he blocked it easily. "I'm busy too," he said lightly. "Work has to be done, no matter how tired we are." "What do you mean?" My hands grew clammy. "Let's just say I need you to come with me. It'll be easier if you cooperate." My chest tightened. "Come with you? I don't understand." "You will," he said calmly. Then he turned slightly. "Ian, take care of him." Before I could react, a sudden blow sent me stumbling against the wall. Pain shot through my head as another stranger appeared from the shadows. Panic surged as I struggled, but then a sharp, chemical scent filled my nose. "No, stop," I gasped, trying to hold my breath as the cloth pressed against my face. "Don't fight it," the man whispered. My body betrayed me. My strength drained, my vision blurred, and darkness pulled me under. The last thing I heard was his cold voice, almost amused. "Good night, Doctor." Chapter 5. Elias Easton POV. I miss you. I put my phone down without replying. Leah had been sending me messages for weeks. No matter how many times I blocked her, she always found a way to reach me. There was always something about Leah that both fascinated and unsettled me. From the very first day she walked into our mansion, she carried herself with undeniable confidence and beauty. Long waves of chestnut hair, sharp green-brown eyes, tan skin, and the kind of presence that drew every man's attention the moment she entered a room. We were only 17 when we first met at a family dinner. She was the daughter of our greatest rival, and our parents had gathered to discuss peace. That night, she couldn't seem to take her eyes off me. There was a tension between us, one that quickly led to stolen moments and mistakes behind closed doors. By the end of the night, we had crossed lines neither of us had planned to. But the fragile peace between our families shattered. Leah's parents were ruthless, and our ideals were worlds apart. Soon after, she disappeared from my life, until one night, when she returned secretly in tears, telling me she was pregnant. My parents were furious but accepted responsibility when hers did not. Leah thought we could make a family out of it. But beyond her beauty, there was nothing binding me to her. She was unpredictable, dangerously flawless, and impossible to trust. When I told her the truth, that I couldn't love her, things between us ended bitterly. One night, she left our son, Sam, on our doorstep and vanished. I hadn't seen her since. Until now, when her name lit up my phone again. But I couldn't dwell on Leah. Because now, after 8 years, a new tension had taken over my life. The same overwhelming pull I once felt toward her, I now felt toward Anthony Lawrence. Only stronger. Anthony lay unconscious before me, fragile and beautiful. My anger spiked as I noticed a bruise on his head. I traced the injury lightly, jaw tightening. "Why is his head injured?" I asked coldly. Eric, lounging nearby, shrugged. "Ian brought him in. Maybe I should have sent someone else." "You know Ian has no self-control," I snapped. "He could have killed him." I leaned closer, pressing 2 fingers against Anthony's neck until I felt his pulse, then hovering my hand near his lips to feel his breath. Relief washed through me. He was alive. Eric yawned. "He's fine. You're exaggerating." I let it go. Eric had done his part, delivering Anthony to me, and he deserved a break. "Go get some rest. Take a week off. You look exhausted." He smirked, rolling his eyes, but left without protest. Once alone, I sat at Anthony's bedside. My hand brushed his cheek, and even that small touch sent an electric current through me. He looked peaceful, unaware of where he was or what awaited him. For a moment, I almost let him sleep. But patience had never been my strength. I grabbed the glass of water Eric had left and tipped it over Anthony's face. He jolted awake, gasping, eyes wide as he scrambled upright, only to stumble off the bed in panic. A laugh escaped me. That's a new one, I mused. I've seen a lot of reactions when people realize they've been taken. But falling out of bed? That's original. Anthony pressed himself against the floor, trembling. Then his blue eyes met mine, terrified and disbelieving. Please tell me this is just a nightmare. Last I checked, I'm very real, I replied with a smirk. His face paled further, and moments later he vomited onto the floor. I didn't flinch. I'd seen it before. Chloroform left its marks. He sat with his back against the wall, whispering to himself, "This can't be real." "Save your energy," I advised calmly. "You're going to need it. You have a long day ahead." Anthony's fear turned to anger. He stood abruptly, fists clenched, eyes burning. "I told you, I can't treat your son. I don't know how." I held his gaze, expression hardening. "You don't have a choice." His voice cracked with desperation. "I'm not the doctor the world thinks I am. I'm not a miracle worker. Please, find someone else." I leaned forward, my tone cold. "I've already tried. You're my last hope. And you will help him." He shook his head, frustration written all over his face. "It would take me months to even begin researching a treatment." "Then you don't have months," I shot back. "You have 1 week." Anthony froze, horrified. "That's impossible. If I rush, I could make mistakes." I pulled my gun from my jacket, raising it steadily until it was aimed at him. He stopped breathing, fear flooding his features. 1 week, I repeated firmly. "If my son dies because of you, so do you. And I won't stop there." Anthony swallowed hard, trembling before whispering, "I'll try my best." I lowered the weapon and allowed myself a small smile. "That's better. Now, clean yourself up. There's a shower down the hall. You'll need your strength." As I reached the door, I glanced back at him. "If you heal my son, I'll let you go. Don't mess this up." I left him with that sliver of hope, though I knew the truth. Anthony Lawrence was never leaving this place the same man again. Chapter 6. Anthony Lawrence POV. I was starting to panic. Never in my life had a week passed so quickly, and I was convinced the universe was against me. I had always followed the rules, done everything my parents asked of me, helped people, supported others, and lived with integrity. Yet here I was, trapped in this nightmare, with little chance of leaving alive. Exhausted, I rubbed my eyes and sat slumped in a chair beside Sam's bed. He looked so much like his father that it was impossible not to see the resemblance. And yet, unlike the ruthless man who had dragged me here, Sam was just a child, still, silent, and clinging to life. I had tried everything, every treatment I could think of, but nothing worked. I wasn't a magician. I wasn't some miracle worker the world believed me to be. I was just a doctor, and a doctor running out of time. The thought that I might die today pressed down on me like a weight. Not because of my own life, but because of the fear that my failure would bring harm to my family and friends. "Please, wake up," I whispered, holding Sam's small hand in mine. "You'd make your dad, and me, so happy if you did." Of course, nothing happened. He remained still, and I remained helpless. When I caught sight of myself in the mirror earlier, I barely recognized the man staring back. My skin was pale, my eyes darkened with exhaustion, and my hair unkempt. In just 1 week, I had become a ghost of myself. And it didn't help that my room was next to his father's. A single door connected us, and every night I lay awake, staring at it, terrified of it opening. Terrified of what he might do if I failed him. "Is this how you treat all your patients?" The voice made me jump. I spun around to find a man leaning against the doorway. His dirty blonde hair was neatly styled, and he wore a fitted black shirt that revealed a strong build. A smirk played on his lips, but I knew better than to mistake him for friendly. He was one of the men who had dragged me here, one who had slammed my head against a wall until everything went dark. Instinctively, I touched the back of my skull, still sore from that night. "You just sit here, praying for a miracle?" he sneered, stepping inside. "I don't know why everyone praises you. You're not doing anything but wasting time. I never believed you were a genius, and clearly, you've proved me right." His words stung, not because they were true, but because they dismissed everything I had dedicated my life to. You think this is easy? I said quietly, my voice trembling with anger. You have no idea what it's like to carry this weight. To be forced into a situation where nothing more can be done, and yet still be expected to perform miracles. The man's smirk faltered, just slightly. You should be careful, he warned. A mouth like yours will only make things worse. I'll tell you what should make you careful, I snapped, stepping closer despite my fear. If I get out of here alive, I'll make sure every single one of you pays for what you've done. It was a hollow threat, and we both knew it. Still, I couldn't bring myself to cower. Not now. He chuckled humorlessly. You really don't know when to keep quiet. Maybe the only reason you've gotten this far is because of your fame and your face. My anger boiled over. Without thinking, I balled my fist and struck him across the face. He stumbled back, clutching his nose as blood trickled down. My breath caught. What have I done? I was a doctor. My duty was to heal, not harm. And yet here I was, trembling, having just attacked someone. Oh no, I whispered, covering my mouth. Rushing to the drawer, I grabbed tissues and ice, pressing them into his hands. He took them silently, glaring at me with a mix of pain and fury. You really do have a death wish, doctor, he said coldly. His voice carried both threat and amusement. I stood frozen, my body shaking as he stepped back toward the door. Don't worry, he added with a cruel smirk. Your wish will come true soon enough. And when it does, you won't be the only one to suffer. With that, he left, leaving me staring at the blood on my trembling hands. Why am I so reckless? Chapter 7. Elias Easton POV. Can we please talk about something else? I muttered in frustration as my parents circled back to the same topic for what felt like the 1000th time. We sat in our massive dining room, gathered around a long polished table. It was a tradition. Once a week we'd share a family dinner to update one another on business and personal matters. It sounded warm, even comforting, but lately I dreaded these meals. My parents had become fixated on one thing: my marriage. Elias, your father and I are worried about your future, my mother said gently, her big brown eyes full of concern. At 49, she was still beautiful, her short dark hair framing a face that looked younger than her years, except for the faint lines around her eyes. I set my wine glass down with a sharp clink. What's there to worry about? Business is thriving. Every mission has been a success. And I already have Sam. Isn't that enough? My father, a tall, broad man with streaks of gray in his hair, exchanged a look with my mother before speaking. His voice was low, firm. It's your reputation we're concerned about. My reputation is fine, I said flatly. Is it? His tone hardened. You fathered a child with the daughter of one of our rivals. And you still have no wife. You're 26 years old, Elias. You need stability. The proper marriage shows strength, maturity. You can't keep living as if consequences don't exist. It brings shame to this family. Heat rose in my chest. We had had this argument countless times, and I was tired of it. First of all, I don't care what others think. Second, a spouse in this life is a liability. It only gives enemies someone to use against me. And third, I hesitated before admitting, there's no one I'm interested in right now. My mother's expression softened, but my father's remained like stone. He was unshakable once his mind was set. Show more respect, he snapped. What people think matters to us, even if it doesn't to you. And marriage won't weaken you, it will strengthen you, if you choose wisely. Which is why, he paused deliberately. We've already found someone. I froze. What? You already know her, my mother added carefully. My father's eyes locked on mine. It's Leah. I pushed back from my chair so hard it nearly toppled. No, absolutely not. Elias, my mother scolded. She is the perfect choice, my father pressed on, ignoring me. She's Sam's mother. She comes from a powerful family. Marrying her would secure an alliance and restore respect. I clenched my fists, fury burning inside me. Leah is manipulative. Cruel. She and her family can't be trusted, and you know it. If you think I'll spend the rest of my life tied to her, you're wrong. Do you have anyone else in mind? My father asked coldly. I hesitated, then admitted, no. Then there's nothing left to discuss, my mother said quietly. Leah and her parents will join us for dinner next week. That gives you time to adjust. My chest tightened. A week? A lifetime wouldn't change my feelings. I didn't regret Sam, not for a second, but binding myself to Leah had been the biggest mistake of my youth. My parents didn't care about me or my son. They only cared about the alliance. I stood abruptly. I'm done here. Without waiting for a response, I strode out of the dining room, slamming the heavy door behind me. Whoa, you scared me, Eric exclaimed as I nearly ran into him in the hall. I stopped short, frowning. His nose was bloodied, tissues clutched in his hands. What happened? I demanded. Eric scowled. I went to check on your little doctor like you asked. Tried to push him a bit. One moment he was quiet, the next, boom. His fist landed right in my face. I blinked, startled. Anthony, hit you? Yes, Eric snapped. So, I'm going to see a doctor, one who doesn't break my nose. Teach him some respect, Elias. I'm done for today. With that, he stormed off. I stood in the hallway, stunned, then felt an unexpected smile tug at my lips. My little doctor had a spark in him after all. And now, after the conversation I just endured with my parents, I needed a distraction. Punishing Anthony for daring to strike Eric sounded like exactly the outlet I was craving. Let's see how far my precious doctor is willing to fight me. Chapter 8. Anthony Lawrence POV. My pulse quickened as heavy footsteps echoed closer. The medical area was quiet, too quiet. It was late and everyone else had gone home. I sat by Sam's bedside, trying to steady my breathing by watching his peaceful, sleeping face. But the calm I wanted refused to come. I had lost control of my temper earlier. That wasn't like me. I had always been quiet, the type to avoid conflict. I never argued, never fought, never hurt anyone. Yet here I was, replaying the memory of my fist striking one of his men. The door creaked open, and my worst fear stepped into the room. I didn't even know his name, and I preferred it that way. Like the others, he wore a perfectly tailored suit, this one a deep blue. His hair was immaculately styled, his shoes polished, every detail calculated. What unsettled me most was the smirk that never left his face. Cold, confident, dangerous. Where do I start? His voice was steady, almost amused, as his pale gray-blue eyes studied me. I gave you 1 week to heal my son, and he looks exactly the same. Still lying there, motionless? That's because 1 week isn't enough. I blurted, desperation slipping into my voice. His expression hardened instantly. I don't want excuses. I gave you an order, and you failed. That's on you. And when I speak, you don't interrupt. You don't speak at all unless I allow it. I clenched my jaw and forced myself into silence, though every part of me burned with frustration. Not here, he said at last, his voice dropping. We'll continue this in my office. Not in front of my son. For just a flicker of a moment, as his gaze lingered on Sam, his face softened with something that looked like pain. It caught me off guard, proof, perhaps, that even a man like him wasn't entirely made of stone. I followed him down the hallway, my eyes darting toward every corner, searching for even the smallest chance of escape. If you're looking for a way out, he said casually without turning, don't bother. The grounds are surrounded, guards at every post. They'll bring you back, or end it quickly. Your choice. We stopped at a large door, and he opened it with a key. After you, he murmured. His stare followed me in, and I felt my cheeks flush despite the disgust twisting in my stomach. The office was vast, with a panoramic window, shelves stacked with books, a couch, and a massive desk at its center. He sat behind it with ease, the throne of his own kingdom, while I stood awkwardly in the medical uniform they'd given me. Well, he began, sitting straighter. Not only did you fail to make progress with my son, you also broke my best friend's nose. I swallowed hard. Of course he knew. I had been foolish to hope otherwise. Unfortunately for you, he continued, that makes your punishment worse. My voice slipped out before I could stop it. What's worse than death? His smirk deepened as he stood and crossed the space between us with slow, deliberate steps. I wanted to retreat but forced myself to stay rooted. If I was going to die, I wouldn't cower. You just can't keep that sharp tongue still, can you? He murmured, towering over me. I braced for a strike, but instead, his hand rose to my cheek. Rough, warm fingers traced my skin. I froze. The touch was far gentler than I expected, and against my will, it reminded me of childhood, my mother's hand brushing my face when I was afraid. Beautiful, he whispered. His thumb ghosted across my lips, sending an involuntary shiver through me. Our eyes locked, his filled with desire, mine with dread. He wanted me to see the hunger in him, but for me it was nothing but unsettling. I pulled his hand away, forcing a bitter laugh. You don't need to pretend to be gentle. If hurting me is part of your plan, just do it. But leave my friends and family alone. They don't deserve this. The words shook as they left my lips, fear spilling into my body as cold sweat gathered on my forehead. Rape? He tilted his head, almost amused. No, I'm no monster. I don't take what isn't given. Everyone I've ever wanted me just as much. You'll learn that. His hand trailed toward my waist, then lower, before I shoved it back, breath-catching. Then I guess I'm the only one who doesn't, I shot back, forcing my voice to sound steady. For a second, silence hung heavy between us. Then he chuckled softly. Perhaps. But lucky for you, I have other plans. Plans? I asked, unease prickling my skin. You'll know tomorrow, he said, stepping back at last. For now, your family is safe. But remember, one wrong move, and everything you love could vanish. Relief and dread battled inside me. You will keep caring for Sam, he continued firmly, and you will find a way to help him. Because trust me, you don't want to see me in a darker mood than this. I nodded silently. Tomorrow evening, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Here in this office. Then I'll reveal your punishment. Or perhaps, his smirk grew sharper. It won't feel like punishment at all. I turned toward the door, desperate to leave, but his voice followed me like a shadow. Good night, Anthony, he said softly, almost mockingly. Rest well. You'll need your strength. A chill ran down my spine. I stepped out quickly and shut the door behind me. Sleep, I realized bitterly, would not come tonight. Chapter 9. Anthony Lawrence POV. As expected, I couldn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned, trying to find even a moment's rest, but it never came. The room itself was modern and luxurious, almost like a five-star hotel. Sometimes I tricked myself into imagining I was just a guest here, until reality reminded me I was a prisoner held against my will. Every morning, a quiet woman brought me food. I tried speaking to her once, asking if she was here of her own choice, but she never answered. She only gave me a sad smile before slipping away. I was thankful they didn't starve me, though I knew why. They needed me alive and focused. I couldn't treat Sam on an empty stomach. The meals were simple, fruit and bread mostly, but I didn't care. Back home I never ate much anyway. My days followed the same pattern. Checking Sam's vitals, treating his wounds, making sure the machines keeping him alive were working properly. And then, waiting. Sitting in that room, staring at the white walls, hoping for something, anything, to change. After hours of it, my eyelids grew heavy. I hadn't had proper sleep all week. Part of me wondered why I should even bother fighting it. My punishment was coming soon. Whatever it was, I doubted I would live to see another week. Still, I held on, because the thought of harm coming to my family or friends terrified me more than my own death. When my shift finally ended, I checked on Sam one last time, then stepped into the hallway. My heart beat faster as I walked toward Mr. Easton's office. Two guards stood outside in black suits, each holding a gun, their faces unreadable. I swallowed hard. Maybe this was it. A quick shot, an end without pain. One of the guards opened the door. Mr. Easton will be with you shortly, he said as I entered. Mr. Easton. So that was his name. Cold, calculated, and strangely polite for someone who had turned my life upside down. I stood in the middle of his office, unwilling to sit without permission. My eyes kept drifting to the massive television and the remote control on the desk. A dangerous thought crossed my mind. What if the news was covering my disappearance? Maybe my parents were looking for me. Maybe I could see their faces, remind myself they were alive and safe. My conscience warned me to leave it alone. But my body betrayed me. Before I realized it, I had the TV on, volume turned low, eyes fixed on the screen. The stories rolled by: another crime, a celebrity divorce, a pregnancy announcement. I was about to switch it off when a familiar name stopped me cold. Spencer Channing. My so-called rival, the man my father constantly compared me to. "I don't think Dr. Lawrence's situation should be dramatized," Spencer told the reporter with a smirk. "Rumors of kidnapping or worse are just rumors. In my opinion, he probably took time off from the spotlight. Maybe he's enjoying a vacation, or even found a lover to keep him company. Who knows?" My hands clenched. How dare he? To stand there, feeding the world lies while I was trapped here. To suggest I had abandoned everyone, that I was living carelessly while they suffered. The reporter continued, "And we've heard you've developed a new treatment for blindness?" Spencer's face lit up with pride as he launched into details of his work, basking in the praise. He was enjoying my absence, thriving in it. I ran a hand through my hair, frustration boiling. My father was probably more angry than worried, furious that Spencer was taking the recognition that once belonged to me. Everything I had built, everything I had sacrificed, slipping away. And all because of him. Elias Easton, with his impossible demand to perform a miracle for his son. The rage burst before I could stop it. I grabbed the remote and hurled it at the TV. The screen cracked with a sharp sound, splitting down the middle. My chest heaved as the reality of what I had done hit me. A voice cut through the silence, low and amused. "You really are asking for trouble, aren't you?" The sound of Elias's laughter froze me where I stood. Every ounce of anger drained into dread. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. How could I keep being this reckless? My father always warned me about letting emotions rule me. And now, standing here with the broken television as proof, I finally understood what he meant. But it was too late. Too late to undo the damage. Too late to hide the fear tightening in my chest. Chapter 10. Elias Easton POV. I switched off the television, still amused by what I had just seen on the security feed. Anthony had snapped, his frustration boiling over until he shattered my screen with the remote. A foolish move, but entertaining nonetheless. It was strange how he could infuriate me and fascinate me at the same time. I had cameras in every corner of this mansion, which meant I never missed a moment of his little outbursts. Watching him punch Eric, for example, had nearly made me laugh out loud. Not that Eric would have appreciated the humor. Still, Anthony was my guest here, and instead of showing gratitude or respect, he had insulted me, defied me, and now broken my property. On television he had seemed calm, composed, the model doctor adored by the world. But in person? He was fiery, temperamental, unpredictable. Part of me admired it. Another part knew it was time to remind him who was in control. I sat at my desk, laid a formal document in front of me, and set down a pen beside it. By the time Anthony entered, dressed in his medical uniform, his tired eyes still managed to burn with resentment. He looked pale, exhausted, yet infuriatingly captivating. "Sit," I ordered. To my surprise, he obeyed without argument, dragging a chair across the floor before lowering himself across from me. His hand kept running nervously through his hair. His anger, his unease, everything about him only heightened the pull I felt toward him. But I shook away the thought. I needed discipline now, not distraction. "Let's begin with the fact that you broke my television," I said sharply. "Without permission. Without care." His jaw tightened. For a moment he looked as though he might stay silent, but then words burst out of him. "It's your fault. You've destroyed everything. My reputation, my family's trust, even my career, because while I'm trapped here, others are taking my place. My parents, they'll think I abandoned them. And Spencer, he'll take everything I worked for." I leaned back, unimpressed. "So, it's easier to blame me than your own parents for believing rumors? And Spencer?" Perhaps he deserves the attention. Maybe he's better than you. That struck a nerve. Anthony's cheeks flushed with anger. If he's so much better, then why didn't you kidnap him instead of me? I almost laughed at the question. Because, I said softly, leaning forward, he's not you. Anthony recoiled, calling me a pervert, his voice sharp with disgust. The defiance was back, and so was my irritation. In a sudden motion I grabbed him, pressing him against the wall. His breath quickened as he struggled, eyes wide with fear. Listen carefully, I warned, my voice low. Every reckless word you speak places your family and friends at risk. You will sit and you will listen. When I finally released him, Anthony collapsed onto the floor, coughing and trembling, but he dragged himself back to the chair. His eyes were watery, but his glare remained. Good, I said, settling once more behind my desk. Now, let's move to business. I pushed the document toward him. Sign this, and your family remains safe. Anthony frowned, scanning the page. His eyes widened. This is a marriage contract? That's right, I said calmly. His gaze darted to me in horror. With who? I raised an eyebrow. Read it. His lips moved over the name written in elegant script. Elias James Easton. He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes as if waiting for me to laugh and reveal it was a joke. But I only smiled. I don't understand, he whispered. First you threatened to kill me, now you want to marry me? Would you prefer I destroy everything you care about instead? I asked evenly. He froze. His hands trembled as he stared down at the paper. That means, I'll never be free. Whoever told you otherwise lied, I said, my tone cold. I can't allow you to run to the police. You belong here now. After a long silence, Anthony finally reached for the pen. With shaking hands, he scribbled his name on the page and shoved it back toward me. His breath came fast, his body tense with defeat. Was that so difficult? I asked softly. I opened the small box I had tucked in my jacket, revealing a golden ring, simple yet costly. I rose from my chair and knelt in front of him. His eyes went wide. This isn't a joke, I told him. It's a promise. Anthony's lips parted, his voice breaking. I don't even have a choice. No, I admitted gently, sliding the ring onto his finger. But one day you'll understand. One day, you'll see how lucky you are. I stood, towering over him, watching the silent fury and despair swirl in his tearful blue eyes. Normally, we would seal this with a kiss, I teased, but perhaps we'll save that for the wedding day. Anthony turned away, refusing to meet my gaze. He whispered bitterly, I hate you. I only smiled. You'll learn to love me. In time. As he stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I remained still, staring after him. A slow grin spread across my face. Don't worry, precious, I murmured to the empty room. I'll make you mine completely. Chapter 11. Anthony Lawrence. For the third time that night, I knelt by the toilet. At first, I had thrown up my dinner, just bread and vegetables, but now there was nothing left in my stomach. Still, the urge wouldn't stop. Slowly, I pushed myself up, careful not to collapse onto the hard bathroom floor. I rinsed my mouth with cold water, splashed my face, and hoped it might wake me a little. It didn't. My body trembled from exhaustion, my stomach ached, and dizziness swept over me in waves. I avoided looking into the mirror. I already knew what I'd see: dark circles, pale skin, and a face I barely recognized anymore. Even my neck still throbbed, as though Elias's grip lingered there. After flushing, I returned to my room and sat on the bed, trying to breathe steadily. But calm never lasted. My eyes drifted, as they had countless times, to the golden ring resting on the nightstand. I had pulled it off the second I entered my room, unable to bear the reminder of what it meant: an unwanted future bound to an unwanted man. I had managed not to break down in tears, but acceptance was harder. Reality was cruel. I was tied to Elias Easton, a man who saw me as little more than something he owned. I felt stripped of choice, of voice, of freedom. And when he tired of me, I knew he would cast me aside without hesitation. The only small comfort was that, in agreeing to his terms, I had at least secured the safety of my family and friends. That thought was all I had to hold on to. Still, one question haunted me. Why me? Unable to bear lying in bed any longer, I left the room. The hallway was dark and silent, the mansion stretching endlessly around me like some grand palace. Every step echoed in the stillness. I had no destination, just the need to move, to keep from drowning in my thoughts. Elias's home was immense, full of rooms for family, staff, and even entire wings for training or medicine. Next to it, I could see another mansion almost as large. Likely his parents. "Hey, who are you and what are you doing here?" The voice snapped me back to reality. Lights flicked on. A guard stood behind me, his gun raised. His black uniform, vest, and boots gave him a commanding presence. He was older than me, maybe 30, with sharp blue eyes and cropped brown hair. Attractive, but the glare he gave me left no room for admiration. I wasn't feeling well. "I just wanted to walk around," I stammered, my words sounding more like a question than an explanation. He narrowed his eyes. "That's the worst excuse I've ever heard. Tell me the truth, or I'll have to deal with you." "I'm the doctor working in the medical wing," I explained quickly. "I had a rough day. I just needed air." The guard frowned. "Doctors don't stay overnight. They finish their shift and leave. So try again." A dry laugh slipped from me. "Go ahead then, try to get rid of me. Your boss won't be too pleased." At that, the guard hesitated. "What do you mean?" "I'm his fiancé," I muttered bitterly. The word itself felt like a cruel joke. The guard didn't believe me for a second. His expression hardened. "Are you done with lies? Or do you want to tell me you're an alien too?" "Kai, what's going on?" A familiar voice came from behind. I turned to see Eric, Elias's right-hand man, the one I had punched yesterday. His nose was heavily bandaged, the bruising obvious. Guilt twisted briefly in me. Eric didn't acknowledge me at first. He walked straight to the guard, Kai, and murmured something. Whatever it was, Kai lowered his weapon and left without another word. Eric's attention then shifted to me. "I don't know why boss gives you so many privileges," he said sharply. "You were told to heal Sam in a week and you failed. Normally that means death. And yet here you are, alive, still mouthing off. At least he gave you a little reminder." His eyes lingered on my neck. Instinctively, I raised a hand to cover the bruises. "Why call your best friend boss?" I asked, deflecting. Eric raised an eyebrow. "I use that title when speaking to people with no value. Like you. You're only here until you're no longer useful." I swallowed the words I wanted to throw back. I'd heard enough about being worthless this past week. Instead, I muttered, "I just wanted to check on Sam. I couldn't sleep." That gave him pause. Finally, he said, "I'll escort you, to make sure you go where you claim." We walked in silence until we reached Sam's room. At the door, Eric's tone hardened. "Boss still has faith in you. Don't waste it. Either heal his son, or he'll stop waiting." Then he left me there. I rolled my eyes at his constant reminders of my supposed deadline and pushed the door open. Inside, I flicked on the lights. "Turn it off." "My eyes hurt," a small voice whispered. I froze. Slowly, my gaze snapped to the bed. Sam, Elias's son, the boy I had fought to save, was awake. His tiny hands shielded his face from the light, his frail body trembling. I quickly dimmed the lights and hurried to his side. His pale face and half-open eyes met mine with fragile strength. "Who are you?" he asked weakly. I filled a glass of water at the sink and returned to help him drink, steadying his chin so he wouldn't choke. For a moment, I wanted to say simply, "I'm your doctor," because that was who I had been this past week. But as the ring on my nightstand reminded me, I was also something else now. Something I never asked to be. I was Elias's fiancé, which, in a strange and terrifying way, made me Sam's stepfather. The thought felt unreal, almost absurd. "Rest now," I told him gently. "You need your strength." His eyes fluttered shut, exhaustion pulling him back under. I sank into a chair at his bedside, unable to stop the small smile forming despite everything. Against all odds, Sam had woken up. Maybe, just maybe, That meant this nightmare could finally end. Maybe Elias would let me go. Chapter 12. Elias Easton POV. I closed my eyes and wrapped my arms carefully around Sam's small, fragile frame. For the first time in months, his chest rose and fell steadily, his body warm against mine. I pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead, ignoring everyone else in the room. Doctors, nurses, staff, even Eric and Anthony. At this moment, there was only my son. The relief in the air was palpable. Sam was awake, and though he still looked weak, he was alive. My mind could barely process it. For so long I had feared he would never open his eyes again. I knew he still had a long road ahead, but for now, that didn't matter. All that mattered was this moment. Earlier that morning, one of the nurses had burst into my room without knocking. Normally, I would have scolded her for such carelessness. But the instant she told me Sam had woken, all my anger dissolved. I rushed here as quickly as I could. And when I entered, my son had called for me in a hoarse voice. Beside him, Anthony had been asleep on the chair by his bed, head resting on the mattress, like he had kept vigil all night. Now Anthony stood quietly to the side, offering a faint smile as he watched us. "Can everyone give us a moment?" I asked. The room emptied quickly. "Except for Dr. Lawrence," I added firmly. Anthony froze. I noticed he had been the first to try to leave, reluctant to be alone with me. Sam, already exhausted, had slipped back into sleep. He would need plenty of rest. I rose from my seat and turned to Anthony, who stood stiffly in the corner, his arms folded, eyes averted. "I'm grateful to you," I said, breaking the silence. "You helped my son." Anthony met my gaze at last, his striking blue eyes calm but distant. "I didn't do much. The other doctors carried him through these months. I was just here when he finally woke up." "Then why now?" I pressed. "Why, after all this time, does he wake up when you're here?" Anthony only shrugged, his eyes drifting back to Sam's sleeping form. That was when I noticed it. His hand was bare. The ring I had given him was gone. "Where is your ring?" My tone was quiet but sharp. Anthony didn't hesitate. "I thought now that Sam is awake, you'd let me go." A rush of anger surged in me. "You signed a contract. You belong here with me until I say otherwise. What part of that do you not understand?" His voice rose, edged with frustration. "I did my job. I don't want to stay here. There are countless people who would line up to marry you just to please your parents, people who would choose it. Why force this on me?" I glanced at Sam, relieved he was still asleep despite Anthony's outburst. My patience snapped. I seized Anthony by the arm and pulled him from the room. "Diana, stay with Sam," I instructed one of the nurses as I passed. "Dr. Lawrence won't be here today." She nodded, though her curious eyes followed us. She didn't know the truth, that Anthony was my fiancé. I dragged him into his room and pushed him inside, slamming the door behind us. "You will wear the engagement ring at all times," I ordered coldly. "And when the wedding ring replaces it, you'll wear that for the rest of your life. I don't ever want to see your finger bare again." Anthony's jaw tightened as he picked up the ring from the bedside table and shoved it back on. "You need to accept your new life," I continued. "Defiance will only make things worse for you. Do not test me." He didn't answer, only gave me the same furious glare he always reserved for me. "And one more thing," I added. "Don't ever speak of certain matters in front of my son again." Anthony laughed bitterly. Even if he heard, he wouldn't remember. He just woke from a coma. And I was right, you could have anyone. But instead, you're ruining my life. You chose someone who hates you. His words stung, though I masked it with a smirk. "You think hatred will change my mind? From the moment I saw you, I knew I wanted you. My heart doesn't take orders, it chose you." "You don't even know me," Anthony shot back, his voice trembling with anger. "Don't fool yourself, it isn't love. It's just obsession. Call it what you like," I said smoothly, though inside I burned with frustration. "But don't mistake my desire for weakness. You'll stay by my side, no matter how loudly you protest." Anthony's cheeks flushed with fury, and his fists clenched, but he said nothing. "But keep that silence at dinner tonight," I warned. You'll be joining me and my parents. And I expect you to be polite. If you humiliate me in front of them, my voice dropped to a low threat. You won't like the consequences. With that, I stepped out and slammed the door shut, leaving him alone. You'd better not disappoint me tonight, Anthony. Chapter 13. Anthony Lawrence POV. With a heavy sigh, I checked my appearance in the mirror one last time, running a hand through my hair to loosen it. Then I straightened my suit jacket and stepped out of my room. The hours before had been long and heavy. I spent them lying in bed, staring at the sunlight through the window. The world outside was bright and alive, but for me, everything felt clouded and gray. I wondered if I would ever walk freely outside again, or if I would remain what I had already become, a prisoner. Earlier, the quiet woman who often delivered my meals had brought me a sleek black suit along with a short note from Elias. His handwriting was neat, almost elegant, though his message was anything but gentle. He instructed me to be ready by 8 p.m. for dinner with his parents. And, in true Elias's fashion, he added that if I refused, he would drag me there regardless of what I was wearing, even if it meant humiliating me in front of them. The threat was clear. I checked the engagement ring on my finger one more time. I couldn't risk another fight. Tonight, I decided I would be polite and play along, at least for a few hours. I was tired of resisting at every turn. It was draining me. When I finally stepped into the hall, Elias was already waiting. I have to admit, I didn't expect you to actually do as I asked, he teased, his smirk evident. But imagine the look on my parents' faces if you had shown up in nothing but boxers. Now that would have been memorable. I ignored his humor. He looked effortlessly perfect as always, dressed in a dark gray suit that likely cost more than my entire apartment back home. His hair was neatly styled, his shoes polished. He glanced at my hand, and when he saw the ring in place, his smile widened with satisfaction. You look incredible, he said, stepping closer. I forced myself not to respond in kind. His stare was too intense, too searching, as though he could see straight through me. It made me uneasy. Your parents are waiting, I said quickly, breaking the silence. He chuckled knowingly. Eager, are we? Very well, let's not keep them waiting. As we walked the long hallway toward his parents' mansion, I tried to steady my nerves. Are your parents prejudiced? I asked quietly. No, Elias replied casually. They don't care about gender. What they do care about is bloodline. Someone raised in this world, someone from a powerful family. That's what matters. I froze mid-step. He smirked, amused by my reaction. Why choose me then? I asked, my voice sharp. When you know exactly what they expect, why not choose someone else? His expression softened into something that was both infuriating and unsettling. Because you caught my eye. Life would be far too dull if I always played by the rules. I clenched my fists but said nothing more. There was no point. By the time we reached the grand double doors of his parents' dining hall, my stomach churned. The room inside was luxurious, its long table piled high with food as though for a feast. At the head sat Elias's parents. His father's face was stern, a mirror of Elias's features aged by years of command. His mother, elegant with short dark hair and warm eyes, seemed more welcoming. Mom, Dad, Elias greeted. They both rose to embrace him. And this handsome young man? His mother asked, finally noticing me. Before I could answer, Elias slipped his hand into mine, lifting it slightly to display the golden ring. This, he announced proudly, is Anthony, my fiancé. The room fell silent. His father's eyes narrowed. You're what? George, don't be rude, Elias's mother scolded gently. She turned to me with a warm smile and pulled me into a hug. I must admit I'm surprised, but I'm glad my son has finally found someone. You can call me Anna. It's nice to meet you, Anna, I replied, my voice faint under the weight of Elias's piercing gaze. George gave me only a firm handshake, his expression cool and unimpressed. As we sat, I prayed the evening would pass quickly. Conversations soon turned tense. George questioned Elias about our sudden engagement, skeptical of how quickly it had happened. Anna, on the other hand, seemed determined to smooth things over, asking how we met. Elias shot me a warning look. My throat went dry, but I forced out the story he'd instructed me to tell, that we met at the cafe where I worked part-time, and that it had been love at first sight. Even to my own ears, it sounded hollow. George wasn't convinced. His eyes bored into me like he could see through every word. "A doctor," he muttered later, shaking his head. "How does that strengthen our family? He doesn't come from our world. He doesn't bring alliances. He can't give us another heir. What use is he?" I swallowed hard, heat rushing to my cheeks. His words struck with the precision of truth, because deep down I feared he was right. Elias only leaned back, calm as ever. Somehow, only Anthony managed to bring Sam back to us. That's reason enough. Anna quickly intervened, chiding George and reminding him that love couldn't always be explained. Still, her husband's disapproval hung heavy over the table. When the dinner finally ended, Anna hugged me again warmly. George offered only another curt handshake before striding out. Relief washed over me as Elias led me from the mansion. "So," Elias said with amusement, "how was it?" I shot him a glare. "That's a question I won't answer." He laughed dryly. "There's that sharp tongue of yours. I almost missed it during dinner." I said nothing. My patience was gone. I longed only to retreat to my room and collapse into bed. But just as I reached my door, Elias's hand closed around my wrist. "You'll sleep in my room tonight," he said simply. "What?" My heart raced. "We're not even married." He didn't release me, only smirked as he opened his door and guided me inside. He locked it behind us. "There are other ways to spend the night together," he said softly, his smile unsettling as he stepped closer. His eyes locked onto mine, intense and unyielding. And for the first time that evening, I truly wondered what Elias James Easton had planned for me next. Chapter 14. Elias Easton POV. "Let's take it slow tonight," I said as I stretched out across my king-sized bed, still in my suit, hands folded behind my head. Truthfully, I was drained from the dinner with my parents. My father had been as impossible as ever, his cold judgment cutting through the evening like a knife. My mother, thankfully, had been gentler, skeptical, yes, but at least willing to accept Anthony. Still, the weight of that tension lingered in my chest, and I hated ending a day with such a restless mind. In this life, sleep was precious. Tomorrow was never guaranteed. And yet, despite the pressure, I couldn't help glancing at Anthony. My so-called fiancé. A distraction, a storm, and somehow the only thing that kept my world from collapsing in on itself. "I'm not doing anything for you," he snapped immediately, his voice sharp with defiance. I smirked. "Relax. Sit down, breathe. I'm going to shower. Unless," I tilted my head with a teasing grin. "You'd like to join me?" His glare could have cut glass. I laughed and retreated into the bathroom, leaving the door slightly ajar in case curiosity got the better of him. The shower's warmth poured over me, steam filling the marble walls. For a fleeting moment, I let myself imagine a different version of us. One where Anthony wasn't trembling under my control, one where he wanted me as much as I wanted him. I shook the thought away. Forcing him would only drive us further apart, and somewhere deep down, I wanted him to choose me. One day, I told myself he would. When I emerged, towel around my waist, Anthony nearly jumped. His cheeks turned red as he threw the blanket at me to cover up. "Don't tell me you've never seen another man before," I teased, slipping beneath the blanket with a tired yawn. "You have no shame," he muttered, refusing to meet my eyes. "Why should I?" "You're my future husband," I replied, winking. "You'll need to get used to me." He scowled, arms folded. "I want to sleep in my own room." "That's not an option," I said simply. His lips pressed into a thin line, fury sparking in his blue eyes. "And where am I supposed to sleep then?" I patted the space beside me. "Here." He froze, his face pale. "No. Especially not while you're like this." "You don't really have a choice," I said softly but firmly. "But don't worry, I just want you close. That's all." Anthony hesitated, trembling, but finally lay on the far edge of the mattress, clutching half the blanket like a shield. His entire body was tense, ready to bolt. With a quiet sigh, I reached out and drew him gently toward me. "No. You promised." "I only want to hold you," I murmured. I wrapped my arm around his waist, pulling him back against my chest. His body was stiff, shaking faintly. I pressed my forehead into the curve of his shoulder, breathing him in. Slowly, I felt him soften, the rigid lines of his body loosening ever so slightly. Tears streaked his cheeks, and something inside me cracked. The desire, the hunger, it vanished in an instant, replaced by a fierce need to protect. I brushed my lips gently across his temple, his jaw, the corner of his shoulder. Nothing more. Just quiet reassurances he probably didn't want from me. "I've got you," I whispered. "You're safe here." He didn't answer. His breathing was uneven, but after a while, it steadied. I stayed awake long enough to make sure he had slipped into sleep. Only then did I let my own eyes close, pressing one last kiss to his damp cheek. If he would only stop fighting me, I thought bitterly, things could be so much easier. Chapter 15. Anthony Lawrence POV. The morning sunlight slipped into the room, warm and bright, though it did little to ease the heaviness in my chest. Another beautiful day I wouldn't be allowed to enjoy. Even if Elias gave me permission to step outside for a few minutes, I knew he'd expect something in return. And I already knew what he wanted from me. The thought alone made my stomach tighten. I turned on my side, half expecting him to still be there beside me, but the bed was empty. The bathroom too. Relief washed over me for the briefest moment. At least I had a little time to myself. But the memories of last night returned quickly. Dinner with his parents. Being forced to share his bed. The way he'd left the bathroom door open, deliberately making sure I could hear every sound. He wanted me afraid. Wanted me to know exactly what he intended for my future. I rubbed my temples, the ache from crying myself to sleep still lingering. On the nightstand sat my medical uniform and a tray of food that looked far more elaborate than usual: eggs, bacon, croissants, fruit, even coffee. At first glance, it could have been the start of a perfect morning, until I noticed the folded note beside the fruit. "Good morning, precious. I slept very well last night and look forward to all the other nights we'll share. Eric will come later to bring you to my office. We have a marriage to plan, after all. In the meantime, spend the day with Sam and check on his vitals." Love you guys. What might have sounded romantic from someone else only made my stomach turn. Marriage. The word darkened everything. He wasn't patient, wasn't willing to wait. He wanted this binding finalized as quickly as possible. Not out of love, but control. I pushed the tray away, appetite gone, and slipped into my white medical uniform. At least it gave me a small comfort, something familiar, something that made me feel like myself. After washing up and showering, I made my way to the medical wing, forcing a smile onto my face. Sam didn't deserve to see the mess I was inside. "Hello, Sam," I greeted as I stepped into his room. He was awake, propped against the headboard, sketchbook in hand. "Hey," he answered softly, closing the book. "I just need to check your vitals. Promise it won't take long." I busied myself with the routine: blood pressure, pulse, oxygen, temperature. He sat quietly through it all, far too solemn for an 8-year-old. "Everything looks good," I told him with a smile. "No pain." He shook his head. I started to pack up when his small voice stopped me. "Can you stay with me a little longer?" His eyes were pleading and I couldn't say no. "Of course." I pulled up a chair beside his bed. Silence hung between us until he spoke again. "Dad came to visit this morning." "You say that like it's a bad thing." "I'm glad he came. I just don't want to get used to it." His voice cracked. Before the accident, he barely paid attention to me. Only birthdays, Christmas, sometimes just to criticize. Thomas. I wonder if he even loves me. Tears welled in his eyes, and my chest ached for him. "Sam, trust me, he does love you. More than he'll ever admit. He'd do anything to keep you safe." The truth of those words cut me. I knew it because I was here, kidnapped, threatened, used, because Elias would do anything for his son. Sam gave a bitter little laugh. "It's only because he needs someone to take his place one day." I handed him a tissue, unsure what else to say. How could a child carry so heavy a thought? To change the subject, I reached for his sketchbook. "These are incredible," I said, flipping through page after page. Fruits, animals, faces, so detailed and lifelike. He blushed faintly. "I still struggle with shadows. They never look right." "May I asked, and when he nodded, I took his pencil. "Think of where the light is coming from. That's where it's brightest. The far side is darkest. Then blend softly as you move toward the center." I demonstrated on a sketch of an apple. His eyes lit up as he watched. "You make it look so easy." "I practiced a lot in school," I admitted with a small smile. "I don't draw much anymore." "Draw me something?" he asked quickly, flipping to a blank page. "What should it be?" His answer came instantly, his whole face brightening. "A penguin. They're my favorite." I couldn't help but laugh. "A penguin it is." For the first time, I saw him light up like a normal boy, chattering about animals and smiling at my sketches. I drew him a penguin, then a panda, then an elephant. He tried copying them, and I showed him shading techniques. Hours slipped by without either of us noticing. When Eric finally appeared in the doorway, I felt a stab of disappointment. "Tony, will you come draw with me again tomorrow?" Sam asked quietly, hope flickering in his tired eyes. "Of course," I said warmly, ruffling his hair. His smile in response was worth everything. As Eric led me toward Elias's office, his usual smugness returned. "You'd better make yourself useful. Boss has plenty of doctors already. If you can't please him, you're of no use at all." I clenched my jaw, forcing myself not to answer. Moments later, Elias himself opened the office door, smiling as though the world belonged to him. "Hello, precious," he purred. And just like that, the relief I'd found with Sam evaporated, leaving me bracing myself for whatever Elias had planned next. Chapter 16. Elias Easton POV. "What a beautiful bride," Cassie exclaimed the moment Anthony stepped into my office. He was only wearing his plain medical uniform, yet somehow, he still looked radiant. My chest swelled with pride. Clearly, I wasn't the only one who noticed. Cassie, one of my closest friends and my chosen wedding planner, hurried over to greet him. "Hello, I'm Cassie Stanford," she said warmly, brushing a strand of blonde hair from her face. "I'll be organizing your wedding. We won't finish all the details today, but I promise I'll do everything I can to make it beautiful." Anthony stiffened at her words, clearly irritated at being called my bride. "I can't believe you managed to win over someone like him," Cassie teased, turning back to me. "Be careful he doesn't get stolen away." "Don't worry," I replied smoothly, slipping an arm around Anthony's waist and pulling him closer. "I intend to keep him by my side." My mind flickered to last night, when I held him close as he slept. His soft breathing against me, the faint scent of his hair, the warmth of his presence. It had been enough to keep me calm, even with my restless mind. For once, I hadn't let my hands wander. "Anthony, you'll have challenges too," Cassie added lightly, flipping through her forms. "Elias is considered quite the catch. If he finds someone better, so be it," Anthony muttered, his voice flat. I shot him a warning glare, but he refused to meet my eyes. Cassie, sensing the tension, tried to smooth things over. "I doubt Elias will ever look at anyone else," she said with a laugh. "Now, let's get started. First, how many guests are you planning for?" 2,000, I answered. 2,000? Anthony gasped. Cassie blinked in disbelief. "That's quite the crowd." "He must have forgotten when we discussed it earlier," I said quickly, taking the list from Anthony's hands before he could object. Cassie sighed and scribbled notes. "And the date?" "The 23rd of July." Her eyes widened. "Elias, that's in just 2 weeks. Organizing something this large on such short notice will be a challenge." I felt Anthony tense beside me, but I held him firmly. 2 weeks might seem rushed, but this wedding wasn't about his comfort. It was about respect, appearances, and proving to the world that he belonged to me. He was my diamond, and I would make sure everyone saw him shine. "Trust me, Cassie," I said calmly. "We'll make it work." Anthony had gone pale, his face drained of color. Cassie noticed instantly. "Anthony, are you all right?" You look like you might faint. Cassie, could you give us a moment? I asked. She nodded, gathering her things and stepping out. What's wrong? I asked as soon as we were alone. I reached out to check his forehead, but he slapped my hand away. As if you care, he said bitterly. Of course I care, I argued. We're engaged. He let out a sharp laugh. Engaged? Do you even know what that means? Engagement is about love. About equality. Neither of those exist between us. My jaw tightened. Love can grow over time. And as for equality, we're both strong in different ways. He shook his head, anger flashing in his eyes. If you call this equal, then you don't understand what equality means at all. His words struck deeper than I wanted to admit. I treat you better than anyone else in your position. You have food, a warm room, and freedom within these walls. I've never hurt your family or your friends. And still, you call me a monster? You are a monster, he hissed. For a moment, something inside me faltered. The word cut through me more sharply than any blade. I had done terrible things in my life, yes, but with him, I had been careful. I wanted him safe, wanted him to one day accept me. But if he saw me as a monster, then perhaps that was all I'd ever be in his eyes. I forced a hollow laugh. If that's what you believe, then so be it. But remember this, Anthony, every word you speak, every choice you make, will shape what lies ahead. Don't test me. His lips pressed together in silence. I straightened and opened the door. Cassie stepped back in with a questioning look. Everything all right? Perfectly fine, I said with a smirk. Let's continue. We only have 2 weeks until the wedding after all. I pulled Anthony roughly to my side, holding him firmly. If he truly thought I was a monster, then perhaps it was time to show him exactly what that meant. Chapter 17. Anthony Lawrence POV. Anthony, what is that supposed to be? I can't call that dancing, Maurice groaned, for what felt like the 1000th time. She had been trying to teach me how to dance ever since Elias announced our wedding date. Honestly, it felt more like torture. I had almost forgotten that the marriage itself would include a first dance in front of everyone. The thought of it made my stomach twist. I can't dance, Maurice, I exclaimed in frustration, just as I accidentally stepped on her foot again. She winced, and I immediately felt guilty. With a sigh, she switched off the music and crossed her arms. Though small in stature, her presence was sharp, and she had been relentless these past 2 weeks. Listen, I know your nerves are getting the best of you, she said firmly, but tomorrow you'll be dancing in front of nearly 2,000 people. Do you want to look like a fool or like a prince? Her words sank in. I kept thinking about the wedding night and what would follow, but I had ignored the fact that the wedding itself would be a public display, an audience of strangers, all watching, all judging. And I'd be alone. No friends, no family. Just Elias, his parents, and a sea of unfamiliar faces. The only comfort I had found these past weeks was in spending time with Sam. He was recovering well, walking again, and his drawings had become brighter and more detailed. Every time he smiled at me, it helped me forget my own misery for a little while. Surprisingly, Elias visited him each morning while I was still asleep. At least Sam was happy about that. After time with Sam came the exhausting part, wedding preparations. Cassie had dragged me into endless discussions about cakes, suits, and music. Elias made most of the choices without a second thought, while I just sat and nodded. And then, of course, there were the dance lessons. So, Maurice said suddenly, snapping me back to the present, "Have you made your decision?" "What decision?" I asked blankly. She gave me a sharp look. "Either you focus now and learn properly, or you accept that you'll stumble through tomorrow and let everyone see it. It's your choice." I forced a smile. "I'll focus." "Good," she said, switching the music back on. It was exhausting, but once I set my mind to it, I caught on. 2 hours later, sweat was dripping from both of us, but I finally managed the steps. Maurice gave me a rare smile. "Now, that's a prince," she said proudly. I pressed my lips together, managing a small smile back. "Thank you." She packed her things, tossing me a wink. "Don't disappoint me tomorrow." When she left, I remained in the quiet dance hall, catching my breath. Tomorrow, everything would change. The thought made my chest feel heavy. Nearly 4 weeks had passed since I was taken, and hope of rescue had grown faint. I thought of Jasmine at the cafe, probably working too hard without me. I thought of Cole, likely back from his honeymoon with his wife, their faces still glowing with love. The contrast between their marriage and mine couldn't be greater. I sighed and stepped out of the hall. I just wanted a shower, some rest, and maybe, though I hated to admit it, some peace from fighting all the time. "Anthony!" Cassie's voice rang out behind me. I froze, already weary of another conversation about flowers or cake flavors. "If this is about the wedding," I said flatly when she reached me, "let Elias decide." She shook her head. "Actually, he told me you have to decide this." I frowned. Strange. He never lets me decide anything. "It's about your wedding night," she explained hesitantly. "He asked if you had any special wishes." I almost laughed. Wishes? What I wished for most was freedom. And he couldn't decide that himself? I muttered. Cassie tried again. "He just wants to make it comfortable for you. Candles? Roses? Music?" "Please stop," I cut her off quickly. The idea of making the night romantic was unbearable. If he wants to plan something, fine. But I don't want to be involved. She studied me closely. "Sometimes I wonder if you even want this marriage. If you have doubts, we can postpone." "Everything's already arranged," I said quickly. "I'm just nervous. That's all." She didn't look convinced, but she let me go. Back in Elias's room, our room, though I still hated to think of it that way, I was relieved to find him gone. I rushed to the bathroom and stepped under the shower, letting the warm water fall over me. For a brief moment, I let myself pretend I was somewhere else, someone else. With Jasmine, laughing over coffee. With Cole, cheering at a game. With my mother, safe in her embrace. But reality returned quickly, and with it, tears. I slid down the cold marble wall, covering my face as my body shook with sobs. When I finally opened my eyes, I froze. Elias's silhouette was visible through the fogged glass. My chest tightened in panic. "Anthony, calm down," his voice urged. Before I could protest, his arms slid under mine, lifting me gently. He carried me out, setting me down on his bed. "Don't touch me." I snapped weakly, my voice breaking. He paused, then quietly pulled the blanket over me himself. "I'm not looking at you like that," he said softly. I turned my face away. "Liar. Do you want me to call a doctor?" "No doctor can fix what you've done to me," I whispered, my strength fading. He hesitated, then changed into workout clothes. Just as he reached the door, he came back. I was too drained to react when he leaned down and pressed a light kiss to my forehead. And then he was gone, leaving me alone in the dark silence. I closed my eyes, forcing myself into sleep. Tomorrow would come, whether I was ready or not. Chapter 18. Elias Easton POV. It's 1 a.m. You're getting married tomorrow, and you still want to work out. Eric yawned as we stepped into my private gym, stocked with every piece of equipment imaginable. I didn't answer immediately. Working out had always been my way of clearing my head. My muscles needed the tension, the push, the weight, anything to keep me from drowning in thoughts. Eric, ever the unwilling companion, climbed onto the treadmill while I settled under a barbell, adding more weight than usual. "Let me guess," Eric said after a moment, "your fiancé got under your skin again?" I pressed the bar upward and exhaled slowly. "He had a panic attack in the shower tonight." Eric raised a brow. "That's normal. He's nervous. Most people are before a wedding." I shook my head. "No. He's nervous because of me. He doesn't want this marriage. He doesn't want me." Eric sighed and picked up his pace. "Elias, you kidnapped him. He's never going to just fall into your arms like some fairy tale ending. He's angry, and he has every reason to be." I stopped mid-set and glared. "So, what do you suggest? You want him to get comfortable with you, right? To actually trust you?" Eric asked. "Then start by acting like a partner, not a prison warden. Have you ever even had a meal with him? Spent one normal day together without threats, without orders? You've kept your distance while he spends every hour with Sam. He doesn't know you, Elias. And if you don't try, he never will. His words stung because they were true. I had done nothing to make Anthony feel at ease. The maids even whispered that he barely ate. He had lost weight, and there were mornings where he looked ready to collapse. To him, I wasn't a husband-to-be. I was a stranger. Eric slowed the treadmill and added, and about the intimacy, don't rush it. You want him to come around someday? Take things step by step. Give him time. Otherwise, you'll push him even further away. I didn't respond, but his words stayed with me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. When I saw the number, my jaw tightened. Eric caught the shift in my expression and stopped the treadmill altogether. What do you want? I snapped as I answered. Oh, Elias, came a soft, mocking voice. Leah. Imagine my surprise when I hear you're marrying tomorrow. And I'm not even invited. Her tone was sweet on the surface, but I knew better. Beneath it was anger, bitterness, and resentment. You're not invited because no one invites their ex to their wedding, I said coldly. I'm not just your ex. I'm the mother of your child, she retorted sharply. I need to know Sam is safe around this new partner of yours. I laughed dryly. Don't pretend to care about Sam now. You never did. You didn't call once during his coma, not even to check if he was alive. And now, the night before my wedding, you suddenly play the role of concerned mother. Leah's mask cracked, her voice rising. You'll regret this. That man you've chosen can't give you anything, not like I could. He's already given me more than you ever could, I said firmly. And unlike you, he doesn't wear masks. I ended the call without letting her answer, slipping the phone back into my pocket. Eric smirked but wisely stayed quiet. Later, after showering, I returned to the bedroom. Anthony was asleep, his breathing slow and uneven. Carefully, I slid into bed and wrapped an arm around his waist. His warmth seeped into me, easing the tension in my chest. Tomorrow he would officially be mine. And no one, not Leah, not anyone, would take him away. I buried my face against his shoulder, inhaling the familiar scent that had already become an anchor for me. For the first time all night, peace brushed against me. Then, as I was drifting toward sleep, Anthony shifted. His blue eyes, catching the pale moonlight, met mine. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. Is it going to hurt? He asked, fear trembling in every syllable. I froze. Thanks for listening to today's BL story. If it made your heart skip a beat, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Only here on BL Stories, where love knows no limits.